Healing Light takes you on a journey where you'll explore the nuances of energy. You'll visit the angelic realms and study the ancient wisdom and teachings of spirituality. We want you to reach within and discover the magnificent being that you came here to be. We help shine God's divine healing light by bringing love, light, and blessings into your world. And now, here is the host of Healing Light, Teri Van Horn.
And I would just want to thank each and every one of you so much for being with us today. And I also want to thank the angels over at OMTimes Radio and OMTimes Magazine for giving me the platform and the opportunity to share with you. Now, for those who aren't familiar with me, I am a Reiki Master Healer and teacher. I also have written several books. I do distant healing and am a medical intuitive. And I do intuitive readings and intuitive counseling for others to help them so that they can live their best life. Now, you can find more info about me and my services on my website, healinglightonline.com, or you can find me on Facebook with the keywords Healing Light. Now, you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter and all sorts of other places as well. Now, today we're going to talk about the Watchers. But before we do that, I want to explain what my plans are for this month. You see, ever since I was a kid, I always thought about things that were unusual or different. You know, it's like I was always fascinated by the unexplained. Now, back whenever I was a kid and you were interested in something that was unexplained, you were basically just weird. And, you know, that was okay. Didn't have a problem with it. But now, when people are talking about things that are unexplained, they're lumped into a category where they're considered to be conspiracy theorists or crazy. But what I've learned over the years and throughout my lifetime is that, you know, this conspiracy theories, quite often, many of them really have information and basis in fact. And so that's what I want to kind of explore this month, is that every week we're going to talk about one of these conspiracy theories and whether or not it actually has, you know, legs to stand on, or if it's just a bunch of fluff. You know, as a kid, there were a lot of things that I was totally fascinated with. I was a geek before it, long before it was a word. My ideal of entertainment was reading the encyclopedias, or my grandmother would give me, you know, like dozens of copies of old Reader's Digest, and I would read them. And from that, I learned about different things that were what we call nowadays conspiracy theories. Now, I always was interested in the possibility of UFOs and aliens. I spent, I don't know how many hours of my childhood looking up at the stars. Now, at that time, aliens only came at night. That was the deal. So I would always look up at the stars at night. You know, aliens didn't come during the daylight. Or at least that was the thought process, which is insane, but that's what people thought. So I always, you know, was be looking up at the stars at night, and got in trouble quite often for not going to sleep early because I kept looking at the stars, just waiting, you know. I just wanted to see one. That's all I'd wanted. I'd be happy. Well, today, it seems that the whole alien sightings thing is very common, and that, you know, they, believe it or not, even show up during the daylight. Now, to be honest, I have still never seen an actual, total 100% sighting, but I still go out a lot of times at night and stare up at the stars because they're so beautiful and so magnificent. And one of these days, I'm convinced that I'm going to get surprised with something. Another thing that I believed in, or read and studied and was fascinated with, was, of course, our dear friend Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. Now, I just love Nessie. I knew that Nessie was this poor little stray dinosaur that was trapped. Now, as the years have gone by, some of the sightings have been considered to be hoaxes. Some of the sightings, there's still a lot of questions about. But there's never been a definitive answer about Nessie. But I always knew as a kid, she had to be around. There's just no doubt about that. But another one was the money pit at Oak Island. Now, this one I read about in Reader's Digest when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I was fascinated by it. This is this huge pit, this huge hole in the ground in a place called Oak Island, that's up in Canada, and this is where just some amazing treasures have been buried. But they've been buried so deep, and there have been so many traps set in this huge hole that no one can get down to the treasure. Now, at 7 or 8 years old, whenever I read this, this was the most fascinating thing that I'd ever heard of in my entire life. And I never could read or find anything else about it again. Well, guess what? There was a man who read that same article, probably about the same age I was. And he, too, was obsessed with it. And now he and his brother have been sponsored by some really huge companies and a cable network. And they actually have a TV series called The Mysteries of Oak Island, where they are going through and trying with the greatest of technology that we have today to find the mysteries of that money pit. And they even have a gentleman who was one of the earlier explorers of this back when we were reading that article. So you see, some of these things that were considered weird when I was growing up are conspiracy theories. We're beginning to actually see that there is some basis in truth. In the money pit, they have actually come up with old coins, Viking coins. They've come up with, just a handful of things, bits and pieces, but they are from such a long time ago that they can't help but believe that all of these stories and legends were true. So these are the kind of things that I wanted to explore during this month. Some of the bizarre stuff. And, just to talk about it and come up, learn a little bit more about some of the theories behind them. And then, I'm not trying to force anyone to believe one thing or another. Just putting it out there and the information out there that we have, kind of explaining some of these bizarre things that have been around for such a long time. So today we're going to talk about the Watchers. Now, the Watchers were, they've been one of those stories that has been around since the beginning of time. The Watchers were supposedly angels that were sent to Earth to watch over humanity. Now, they were written about in the book of Daniel. And in that book, they were written about how holy and how wonderful and special that the Watchers were. Now, also in the book of Enoch, which is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I really believe very much in because, they're untainted. They haven't had multiple translations. But in Enoch, they refer to the Watchers as being good angels and some bad angels. some of them were a little bit rebellious and a little bit, they were causing some problems with us. Now, in Daniel, there were like 3 different references to the watchers. Nebuchadnezzar actually kind of gave them their name, where he said he saw a watcher, a holy one, come down from heaven. And he talks about in his dreams that the watchers say that he will eat grass and be mad, and then his punishment is by the decree of the watchers, the demand by the word of the holy ones. The living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. And then Nebuchadnezzar went to Daniel and said, Daniel, explain this to me. And so the response was, and because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from the heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots on the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the fields, till the 7 periods of time pass over him. And this was an interpretation. O king, it is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king, that you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling should be with the beasts of the fields, that you should be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven, and 7 periods of time shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will. Now that was the first real comment, and probably the only comment in the Bible that talks about the watchers. Now, when we get back, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to hear about the watchers from the standpoint of Enoch.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
From the books of Enoch. Now, Enoch had 2 books. The first one talks about the fall of the Watchers. The Watchers are supposed to be there to keep an eye on us and to help humanity. But they kind of messed up a little bit. And so Enoch talks about this. And you see, what happened was They came to Earth to watch over the humans, but they kind of fell in love with earthly women. And as it says, they lusted for the human women. And what happened was they kind of defected so that they could live with humanity and have their little flings with human women. Now, there were a lot, about 200 fallen angels, according to Enoch. And basically, these angels, they bred with women, human women. And the result of it were the Nephilim, who were giants. And these giants were basically, they had an attitude. And they came in and they started tearing everything up. Now, when the fallen angels, the watchers, stayed here to help humanity, they taught us a lot of things that they probably should not have. And it was during this time when they were mating with the human women that they decided to embrace humanity as much as they could, being angels. They taught us about enchantments. They taught us about weaponry. They taught us how to kill. They taught us a lot of different things that come from the anger and fear side, whereas God and the other angels were teaching us more about love and compassion. Now, as these watchers did this, then more and more women became pregnant. And that's how we got the Nephilim. They appeared later on Earth, and they were the giants. They were also considered to be many of the heroes of olden times. They were the ones that were considered to be really renowned, the powerful and strong ones. Now, there's a lot about them in Enoch, particularly the second book talks a lot about this. But there are also other teachings that tell a little bit about the Nephilim. One of them is in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. Says, when men began to increase on earth and daughters were born to them, the divine being saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and took wives from among those that pleased them. The Lord said, my breath shall not abide on man forever, since he too is flesh. Let the days allowed him be 120 years. And it was then, and later too, that the Nephilim appeared on earth, when the divine beings cohabited with the daughters of men who bore them offspring. They were the heroes of old and the men of renown. Now, there are also other comments in Isaiah and even in Psalms about these Nephilims. Now, these were the giants. They were really wicked. They were evil. They were destroying things. They were causing a lot of problems. When you're talking about somebody 10, 12 feet tall, there can be some issues. Now, what's really interesting is that there is also references to this in other religions, other spiritual and ancient texts. So it's very interesting how we have this in ancient writings about how we had these watchers who came down. They fell in love with human women. They bred with them. And as a result, these giants were born. So that's really an amazing concept. Now, there's a book called the Book of Jubilees that also tells about how the Watchers fell into disgrace and became fallen angels, because they too, it discusses almost the exact same thing, almost verbatim, about how they have done this and how they have changed the course of humanity. Now, we hear every once in a while that there were giants found here and there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's talk about some of the things in Enoch that talks about some of the angels that were mentioned and some of the things that they did that were really evil. Now, we had what referred to as the 5 Satans. This is based on Enoch, not on the Bible. And I will do my best to pronounce their names as correctly as possible, but they're bizarre. We have Yiquan, and this is the one who misled all the children of the angels, brought them down upon the earth, and perverted them by the daughters of the people. He was the head guy causing the problems. Asbel was the one who gave the children of the holy angels evil counsel and misled them so that they would defile their bodies by the daughters of the people. We have Gaddarel, he who showed the children of the people all the blows of death, who misled Eve, who showed the children of the people how to make the instruments of death, such as the shield, the breastplate, the sword for warfare, and all the other instruments of death to the children of the people. Penume demonstrated to the children of the people the bitter and the sweet, and revealed to them all the secrets of their wisdom. Furthermore, he caused the people to penetrate the secret of writing and the use of ink and paper. And then the last of the 5 Satans is Cassadal, he who revealed to the children of the people the various ways of all evil, of the souls and the demons, the smashing of the embryo into the womb so that it may be crushed, the flagellation of the soul, snake bites, sunstrokes, son of the serpent, whose name is Tebata. Now, there are a lot of other ones that were considered to be fallen angels, but these were the main ones. So I really suggest that you explore some of the books of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They are fascinating. And there are so many stories and things that you can learn from these particular books. And they don't have the multitude of translations like the books of the Bible do. But this was just not something that was a conspiracy theory of the last 20, 30, or 40 years. This is something that even Philo of Alexandria, who lived between 20 and 50 BC, even wrote about the giants that were on the land. That, these giants were here, even with Moses. They were here helping out in some cases, but mostly wreaking havoc and causing problems. And they ended up really, just kind of terrorizing humanity. Now, like I said, the offspring between the angels and the human women were called Nephilim. And they were referred to as the fallen ones, but also in some acts they were referred to as the dead ones because they were completely different from humanity. They were huge. There's no doubt about that. And also, they were great warriors, particularly during biblical times. Think back to the story about David and Goliath. David was fighting this big, huge monster giant guy. So that could have very easily been the Nephilim. And we have biblical writings about that. And we have it written in several different ancient texts. But you see, they had a lot of problems, a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. And whenever they talk about them in the Bible, they refer to the fact that the Nephilim were so much of a challenge and so difficult that they actually were the cause of the Great Flood, because there was no other way to rid them from the planet. So, that's a really interesting concept, that God had to flood the planet because of these giants that were caused by the Watchers, which were the angels who lived here on Earth, helping, or supposedly helping, to take care of humanity. So it brings in several different stories and things that we've heard in the past that now, of course, are considered to be conspiracy theories. But, once you start reading some of these ancient texts, it starts making a little bit of sense. And I've always thought that this was fascinating. And of course, so many people refer to the Bible as being the go-to place for information about these sorts of things. And that's why I like the fact that we do have so many verses and references to the fallen angels and the giants. Now, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Nephilim.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
This is Healing Light and Teri Van Horn, and today we're talking about the Watchers. But the conversation about the Watchers very quickly turns into a conversation about the Nephilim, which is translated into the words giants. Now, when you start reading some of the ancient biblical text, you start finding things that kind of put all of the story together. This isn't like reading between the lines or picking and choosing verses. Okay, this is taking words directly out of the verses. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, they talk very specifically about giants. Even in the King James Version, there are the words giants mentioned. Genesis 6:4 says there were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, they bare children to them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now, another is Numbers 13:33. And it says, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Enoch, which come of the giants, and when we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. But it's also in the Hebrew version, very much so. And that's where they're using, and in the Torah as well, and that's where they're using these terms, giant and, Nephilim. So, if we're talking about the watchers being the fallen angels, a lot of people only think of the fallen angels as being of Lucifer. But that's not the case. And even as you go through and you read, these different books and these different ancient texts, it talks about how there were quite a few fallen angels. And the problem is that the Nephilim were difficult. They caused problems, couldn't get rid of them, and that's one of the reasons why God instigated the flood. Now, this is not a total bizarre out there conspiracy theory. This is something that has been around, like I said, for a very, very long time. Even before Christ, there were stories about this. Now, since then, there have been many stories about how ancient skeletons have been found. As a matter of fact, just the last week or two, I saw an article that a finger had been found. And of course, now I can't find the article anywhere. But it was like enormous because this finger was like 3 feet long or so. So we keep hearing stories about giants being found. There are stories about some being found in Wisconsin. I think like 18 of them. I've also seen TV shows where they are, and these are like reality, not reality shows, but they are documentaries of people in search of these giant skeletons. So we're told that many have been found by archaeologists. We have seen a lot of evidence of different pieces here and there. Some say that they were about 8 feet tall. Some say that they were 25 to 30 feet tall. I would guess that the earlier versions, the original first generation, may have been 25 feet tall or 30 feet tall. And then as they continually bred with humans, they started getting smaller. But there have been skulls that have been found that have been very different. They're certainly not a normal human skull. They'll have double rows of teeth, for one thing. They have 6 fingers and 6 toes. There have been some who have had elongated skulls that have been found. And I have seen different skulls that were like enormous compared to a normal human skull. And you have to ask, is this stuff real? There are stories that I have read numerous stories. I have not been able to confirm it one way or the other. But there was a story that was published actually 2 days ago. And it said that there was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that forced the Smithsonian Institute to release classified papers dating from the early 1900s that proves that the organization was involved in a major historical cover-up of evidence showing giants' human remains in the tens of thousands that had been uncovered across America. These were ordered to be destroyed by high-level administrators to protect mainstream chronology of human evolution at the time. Now, these allegations are coming from the American Institution of Alternative Archaeology. Now, there have been a lot of stories about how people have found giant skeletons in the U.S., and they didn't know what it was. There are pictures. How many of these pictures are real? Some of them are very, very old. Are the bones dinosaurs or are they human bones? But let's face it. If you were digging in your backyard today and you found something like that, who would you contact? Most Americans would end up contacting an entity like some of the major museums. And then the largest museum in the United States is the Smithsonian. Where better to contact scientists and researchers to get answers to your question? But, supposedly, these have been destroyed. So it does make people wonder if it's real or if this is something that just a bunch of people made up because they had way too much time on their hands. But you have to wonder if it's coming from all of these different texts, all of these different ancient writings. There are pictures. There are documents in, modern day, like in the last 100 years, of people finding all of these bones and these skeletons and these skulls. Then what is the deal? Is this real or not? Supposedly, in the 1930s, there were quite a few that had been turned over to the Smithsonian. Supposedly, these are supposed to be, released and let people know and understand what the truth is. Now, there are other things that have come up about the giants. And, some of them you can go and look them up on Snopes and find out that they are fake. But you have to wonder, are these a hoax? There were some that you actually can see on sites like National Geographic. Now, I don't think that National Geographic would be doing a bunch of photoshopped hoax photos. It's not that kind of organization. But if these are being found all over the place, then where did they come from? And, I can understand that a lot of people in society would not want to have them, out there because it does change all of our teachings, everything that we believe up until now. Basically, human history only goes back about 6,000 years, according to the experts. Because what happened is it just went past, a few thousand years BC, I think 3,500. And that was the Sumerians. And so no matter what we find now, how old the mummies are, or anything else, how old the skeletons are that are dated, they still try to fit them in. Or they may find skeletons or ruins or things like that that are over that age. But they just have them written up basically as an anomaly. So how do you get a skull or a skeleton that's 30,000 years old based on carbon dating, but yet human history only goes back to 3500 BC? It doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing that is so confusing when people try to understand what's going on or more about our ancient history. Because, there are certain people, organizations who keep it very consistent, very steady as to what our timelines are. They don't want to go past that 3500 BC. But yet, there are also the same people who will say that different structures on the earth are much, much older than that, like the Sphinx and the pyramids and the Bosnian pyramids. Good Lord, those things are supposedly 30,000 years old. Well, if humanity's only been here since 3500 BC, or that's whenever our first civilizations are, then how on earth did we build something 30,000 years ago, like these different pyramids? But supposedly, they've also found a lot of these giants' remains near Stonehenge. So when we get back, we're going to talk about them as well.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
And you're listening to Healing Light. Today we're talking about the Watchers, which now we've moved the conversation a little bit further because the Watchers were angels who were sent to Earth to help take care of humanity, but they ended up breeding with human females and creating the Nephilim, which were the giants that walked the earth at one time. Now, a lot of discussion has been about the giants being found on American soil. But also, there has been historically conversations and writings and discoveries about burial mounds that were near Stonehenge, where they also found giants. And these were just too big to be ancient man. So this has been found a lot in that area around England, Scotland, and Ireland. And some people said that it was early man because the skulls were so much larger. But others say that these were actually giants because they were like huge, huge, huge. Now, if we're trying to, discuss this pros and cons, we have to ask, why don't we find them in the museums? Where are they? Why isn't there any evidence of them? We have everything else in the museum. So why not them? Well, honestly, I don't have a really solid answer for that. Supposedly, the Smithsonian got basically all of them, as much as they could acquire, and destroyed them. So it makes you wonder, is this a big conspiracy theory that the Smithsonian and everyone was trying to hide this? Or, is it fake? Now, I do know that there have been a lot of photos that are considered to be fake. Some of them are pretty amazing because people will go and do incredible Photoshop. And I've seen a lot of photos that definitely were not real. And, you can tell the difference. You can tell when you've superimposed all these people with this big, huge, giant skull. But really, it's up to us what feels right to us. Is this something that is real? Or is it, just some story that people have been telling for the last 6,000 years? Are some of these giant skulls Neanderthals? Or are they actual giants, the Nephilim, those who came in as a result of angels breeding with humans? This is probably not something that's going to get settled anytime too terribly soon. But I know that a lot of the photos that we see are definitely created. They are photoshopped. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to go back to some of these ancient writings and say that this wasn't true. There was a Jewish historian named Flavius Josephus, and he wrote about the Jewish war that was in 79 AD and spoke about giants and that they were part of it. And there are stories with the American Indians. The Sioux tribe talked about giants that were 3 times the size of modern men. But they were so powerful that they could run alongside and stay as fast as a buffalo, pick it up under one arm, and actually eat it as they're still running. But they felt that they were so superior. And let's face it, 3 times the size of men, 3 times stronger. You got to feel kind of superior like that. But they were so vain and so felt that they were so superior to humanity that they had to be destroyed. And they just were destroyed through the flood. So, if the Sioux Indians are telling this story, and other ancient cultures are telling these stories, then you have to wonder about what the truth is. So, for this one, I have no answer for you. But I know that I'm still going to continue to study and learn about some of these cultures and to see for myself, what is the truth. But I think it is a very fascinating concept. God told us that he was sending watchers to help us. And then we are told in several ancient texts that these watchers were angels, but they became fallen angels because they basically fell for human women. And that's how we ended up with giants on the planet, but it also explains why the giants are no longer on the planet. They were a little too full of themselves. They were a little too destructive, and they had to go. So this is, one of the great mysteries that we have. And I know that one of these days it'll end up getting solved. And I just hope that whenever scientists, archaeologists start finding the truth, that it's not overshadowed by all of those who were doing the scams and, the photoshopping and all the ridiculous pictures that we've seen that weren't true. So that we can get a handle on, what's accurate, what's right, what's wrong, and what actually transpired during our history. So, those angels, they were here to protect us, but they messed up a little bit. And so the rest, we just have to learn about ourselves and discover what is our truth. Now, next Wednesday, we're going to talk about angels or aliens. Not R as in A-R-E, but R, O-R. We've heard about angels that were from the heavens. But when you think about it and break it down, the heavens are another dimension. Yet, throughout history, particularly ancient cultures, who had really no reason to come up with hoaxes, but they've always told us about the others who have come from other dimensions to help out humanity in their development. The ancient cultures even drew drawings of those who came to help us. Some did kind of look like angels. They had their wings, they had their halo. Other ones definitely looked like little space guys. They had suits, something to help them survive. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you some information about really, what are they? Is it angels? Is it aliens who have come in? Or is it all the same thing? A divine, benevolent being who is here to help and support us coming from another dimension. When you describe it that way, either one could fall into that category. But we'll talk about it and see what we come up with for sure. Now, I want to thank you so much for being with me today and for listening. Remember that if you do want to hear any of our programs on the archives, all you have to do is go to OMTimes Radio and click on Healing Light, and you'll be able to pull up all of our programs on the archive. You can find that link either by Googling it, or you can find it on my website, which is healinglightonline.com. Either way, it's easy for you to be able to find it and get that information. I invite you to join me on my Facebook page, on Healing Light Online on Facebook, where we have inspirational messages. I also have links to special services that I'm providing at a discount so that you can get healing sessions, readings, anything like that at a reduced rate. Because I do this to help out, but at the same time, this is how I support myself. So I do ask for an energy exchange whenever I am helping someone out and spending my time, energy, and efforts in doing that. I also want to encourage you to get on the website for humanityhealing.org. These guys do an amazing job of saving people all over the world. And if you can, contribute to help them out, because that is their sole purpose, is to save people who have been endangered. Some are endangered because they're born different, and they're tortured because of that. And these guys work very hard to get them out of those situations and get them into a place where they are safe and that they can live out their lives and their full potential. Thank you again for everybody who's been with us and listening to us today. And I look forward to connecting with you again next week